Since the shooting of Michael Brown by Officer Darren Wilson on August 9th, one chant has created a narrative that has dominated the faithful encounter.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
Hands up, don't shoot, something Officer Darren Wilson says never happened.
Some of the eyewitnesses have said when at that moment when he turned around and put his hands up.
That would be incorrect. Incorrect.
No way?
No way.
So you say he starts to run, does a stutter step, starts to come towards you, and?
At that time, I gave myself another mental check. Can I shoot this guy? Legally, can I? And the question I answered myself was, I have to. If I don't, he will kill me if he gets to me.
Well, a review of the grand jury documents by the Associated Press would seem to back up Officer Wilson. They say that witness testimony doesn't conclusively back up that now famous rallying cry. So how did it come to define the encounter and spur global response? All right, David, you returned to Ferguson just a couple of days ago, but I know you've read over this evidence that the grand jury presented. The witness testimony was seemingly all over the place, which created reasonable doubt, and reasonable doubt is not enough for a conviction.
It starts with a lie. It is a lie. Hands up, don't shoot is a lie perpetuated by Michael Brown's accomplice in the robbery, Dorian Johnson. So let's call it what it is. All of this hands up, don't shoot needs to go away. It had nothing to do with this. We now have the evidence from the grand jury. We have the witnesses who changed their statements. We have the testimony of witnesses. And it's been turned from what was an incident between two people. There was a bolo for them. The officer spotted the cigarillos. He went out, he saw someone, they were walking down the middle of the street. That incident led to an encounter, led to a violent encounter between the officer, led to a lie. All of this is cooked up, hands up, don't shoot, because of a lie. Michael Brown was not the victim. The original police report, there's only one, says victim, Officer Darren Wilson, and suspect, Michael Brown.
Juan, hands up, don't shoot. You see people doing it at these protests all over the country in major cities. As David says, though, not enough evidence to support that happened. And Officer Wilson said that never happened.
Not enough evidence to support that it didn't happen. All that you see in the transcripts, Andrea, is that people have varying accounts of where his hands were. Some people say his hands were at chest level. Some people say at his stomach level. Some people say at his side. We don't know about what he might have said. No one was there except for the other man that David described as his accomplice, who started this, who said that he said, don't shoot. We don't know.
Well, but he contradicted himself in an interview on Radio 1. He contradicted himself, and then he disappeared. Where is Dorian Johnson?
I don't know where he is. I imagine that everybody, where's Darren Wilson? I mean, everybody in this thing is, I think, injured and hurt. But I will say that I think it speaks to a larger subject here, which is I don't think that there was any way that you can say that Officer Wilson was directly pursuing this guy because of the robbery. The kid apparently was thuggish and wrong-headed, and there had been an announcement that, somebody had stolen $40 worth of cigars. But is that a reason to kill a kid?
No, because
some of the
one
evidence. So, David,
didn't
it show that he was reaching into the police car as well?
He was fighting with him inside the police car. And by the way, Juan, we've got to stop drawing the line of what led to the killing. The stealing of the cigarillos, the incident between them doesn't necessarily lead to the killing. It's the actions of Michael Brown. His actions when the police officer...
Excuse me, but I don't think he had the gun.
Juan, before you even get to that point, Michael Brown walking down the street in the middle of the street. If I'm walking down the middle of the street and an officer says to me, don't walk down the middle of the street, I will get off the street.
Me too.
All right.
Me too. But if the cop, you think that's a reason for a cop to shoot you?
No. You're trying to draw it to that.
No, I'm just saying. You say, it's because he's walking in the street. That's not right.
But if you charge an officer,
if you
doesn't
fight
that
an
create
officer,
a different
if you grab
level?
the gun, if you go after it.
Jedediah, I want to ask you
self-defense.
about Wilson because Michael Brown's mom came out and she said that it seemed like he wanted to kill. And in that interview, this is a cop who's never pulled his gun before. We can't get in his head. But I don't think that many cops run around wanting to kill people. Is it fair to call Darren Wilson a victim as well? I mean, his lawyers came out and said he was never going to be a part of the police force again. His life is ruined.
Yeah.
Is it fair to use that title with him?
I mean, if he were acting in self-defense, this guy's life is never going to be the same. He's now going to have to worry about his own safety, the safety of his family, probably for the rest of his life. I think it's crazy, and I think the media ran with this narrative like they do all the time. They wanted to decide, the media made a decision in large part. They wanted to decide who was the victim, who was innocent, and who was guilty. And a lot of people don't know the facts. When I go out and I talk to people about this case, a lot of people don't know that he robbed a convenience store. A lot of people don't know that he charged an officer. A lot of people don't know that that police officer was, based on all of the eyewitness accounts and all this evidence, was acting in self-defense. They know what the media told him. And that's the problem, that before we have any of these facts, the media always decides who's innocent and guilty. And that's just not fair. That's not fair to anybody involved.
And Tom, we heard that for weeks when no one knew what happened except for any eyewitnesses at the scene or Officer Wilson. And we saw other networks running with this storyline, this manufactured storyline of what happened, and they didn't know. And now we see that it's all turned out to be a lie. Okay. So where's the apology from the news networks?
Well, I have two questions. One, okay, the relationship between the police forces and the community is a legitimate issue, all right? Yeah. And some people have a huge problem with it, and they want to protest it. But why did they choose this crime? It doesn't seem to fit. I mean, you know, there are cases of police brutality, and I can understand protesting those, but this looks like, how did it happen? How did this become the rallying cry? Because it never really fit. The story, you are against...
Because it was black and white. This is why it fit the rallying cry. Because it's the rallying cry of the Al Sharptons of the world, and the rallying cry that went out there with the Community Relations Service, which arrived on scene within a couple of days, sent there by the Department of Justice under Eric Holder. And you look at what they did. They took what was an incident between a suspect and it turns out a thug and a police officer, where if a white person had reached into the car of a black police officer and done the same thing, that police officer would have had the same responsibility to maintain control of his weapon. You don't want someone who's willing to wrestle with a cop for his gun to get that gun and take off with it, whether he shoots the officer or not. You don't want that gun out there. And what we've got is there's a race dynamic they can sell over the issues. There are issues to be addressed, but then they never go to the foundation of the issues.
You know, David, I just think this is so wild. I mean, look, I got to tell you something. I don't want anybody to make a hero out of this kid. I just
but
don't.
They have made it.
Stop.
Brown's
Wait a second. But I don't get what you're saying at all. It seems to me that if a person had been shot, and you know what, black kids get shot all the time by police.
So do white kids.
Let me finish.
Hispanic kids.
Hang on. But you know what? It doesn't become Ferguson when most white officers shoot a black kid like that. We've seen it in Cleveland. We've seen it elsewhere, and it does not have the response that Andrew's been talking about. And I suspect it's because of this hands up, don't shoot that has become the meme for all the protest and all the walking around. But it's not to say that every time a white cop shoots a black kid, you have this response. That's why Tom's question is so pertinent.
I got another question that's very pertinent. Why do the police have to clam up for months? Why weren't they out there the night of that shooting and saying, look, everybody calm down. This is not what the protesters are saying. This may be a justified shooting. Why doesn't everyone... They didn't say a word.
Well,
they kept quiet.
There was a lot of justified criticism for how the police...
They could have handled it better. Yeah. Without a doubt, they could have handled the response better. But I was down there in August, and I'm telling you that the cacophony that was coming out of the people, the media, the riots, and all the political figures that got involved, including State Senator Nasheed, who talked about if there is no indictment without any evidence, when you have a state senator and officials saying without an indictment there will be riots and there will be more blood, you are not going to get above that din.
And they're still jumping in and talking about this even after they failed to indict Russell Simmons and a number of celebrities weighing in on this. Simmons tweeting, "Together we can stand up and spark change. Join United Blackout for Blackout Black Friday." And this has spurred a number of protests, Juan, at different Target stores. Now, Target, I went to their website. Target is a strong proponent of diversity, supplier diversity, they call it on their website, developing relationships with minority and women-owned vendors and suppliers. How did Target become the target of this Black Friday protest? And what does Target and Black Friday and shopping have to do with Ferguson?
I'm not sure why Target, so it's a puzzle to me. But again, it seems to me that if you have a legitimate grievance in our country, you can protest anywhere you like. You can march down the street and block traffic, and it's an inconvenience, and it'll make me angry in many cases because I'm trying to get somewhere. But I don't see that that's illegitimate. You can have your protest. I don't have any argument with that. I do have an argument when you make things up.
But how does that help the community? How does even blocking traffic or looting or shutting down businesses or boycotting, how does that help the community? You're only hurting the very community you're in. You're talking about job losses. You're talking about hurting the lives of regular citizens that are trying to go pick your kids up at school or get to work. That doesn't bring about any social change.
It does. Gosh, that's the history of the civil rights movement, was boycotting, marching, and letting people know that you have a legitimate grievance and asking that the society respond in an effective way.
And I agree with that one. But
it's not destroying necessarily the black community, which is what rioting does, which is why I find rioting is like, it's like self-destructive or suicide or craziness.
There were also protesters arrested yesterday, Tom, at the Thanksgiving Day parade here in New York. And I think some people are going, what does one thing have to do with another?
Well, you're not going to get any goodwill stopping SpongeBob from going down the street.
Or Spider-Man.
I wanted to watch SpongeBob. Do not stop that parade.
You were waiting for that.
The thing is, this Black Friday protest it's just strategically a mistake, because you can't tell the difference between protesters. And do you see the way these people behave on Black Friday? I mean, they look like protesters anyway. They're uncivil, these people, so you can't tell who's a protester and who's shopping.
Also, Pharrell Williams, a very famous hip-hop artist, he's taking a lot of heat for weighing in on Ferguson. He came out and said, why aren't we talking about that, the bullyish behavior of Michael Brown? Now, he is taking a lot of flack for this, David, because they're saying, what are you talking about? And Pharrell saying, I think we just need to have a conversation in the black community about why Brown was acting the way he was, disrespecting the cops.
He robbed the store next to a McDonald's. If he'd gone and filled out an application at that McDonald's, he might have had a job where he could buy his cigarillos. We have the video. That's what Pharrell is talking about. And for everybody that wants to talk about Target, which is right around the corner from where the riots were, and tomorrow, which is Shop Small Business Saturday, how's that going to benefit the burned out businesses in Ferguson and surrounding neighborhoods? Where are people going to shop small business
but it's
Saturday?
about your grievance. Look, I'll tell you something. I wrote a book, and in the book, it's called Enough. I point out, if you have high levels of crime in the black community and you have thuggish behavior, you're inviting consequences. Yes. It's like this, some people say, why couldn't he obey the cop, right, Tom? It would have been reasonable.
He also, Pharrell, by the way, I thought his name was Farrell until this very minute.
You just make that stuff up. You make that stuff up.
I'm phonetic. I thought his name was Farrell. Anyway.
Wait, do you have any friends who are hip?
I listen to him sing. He's happy. He's dancing around the streets. I love the guy. But I think they took him out of context. He said, I'm upset by this. He was upset by the verdict. He thought they should have put this guy on trial. He didn't like the results of this. But he also saw the other side of it. He had a very, I thought he had a very good viewpoint. He saw all sides of the issue, and all of a sudden he's villainous. So this guy's great. He's
that's
happy.
Because you don't dare go against the, quote, black narrative. If you go against the perceived black narrative, you're immediately a racist, even if you're black or otherwise.
We got to go. We didn't have a lot of time to discuss this, but Benjamin Watson, who's a player for the New Orleans Saints, made a very, very, I would say, retweeted Facebook post saying that this is not a skin problem, it's a sin problem. Also seeing both sides of this.
That's why it went viral.
Because
people can't believe, when someone sees both sides of an issue, they can't even believe it. They say, oh my God, this is unbelievable. They forward it to their friends.
And a shameless plug, Watson will be on Greta later, and I'll have him exclusively. I'll be filling in for my friend Greta.